what I plan to actually go over is discovering PowerShell through the command line, and also we're going to touch on discovering .Net a little bit using some of the reflection, some of the reflective properties of .Net from inside the PowerShell command line. So as far as the discovering PowerShell part, I'm mostly going to focus on 3 commandlets. This is mostly targeted at beginners, so if you're not a beginner, then you've probably heard other people talk about how important Git help, Git command, and Git member are as commandlets. If you really invest some time into learning how to use those 3 commandlets, it really will help. You literally can do almost anything without having to search on the internet. Searching on the internet is definitely a good thing. Reading books, reading blogs, things like that. But if you learn how to use those 3 commandlets, it can save time while you're actively trying to write a script or work from the command line. And actually, I honestly and truly think, I've found things just reading random Git help topics from inside the PowerShell documentation. I've found hidden gems that I've read a lot of books, and I've read a lot of online resources, and I've still, almost any time I'm reading a help article, I'll come across something in the long description or in an example that I just didn't know that whatever commandlet or function I'm looking at had the ability to do. So to get started, we'll start on Git help, because that's one of the that's one of the commandlets you'll use the most. In PowerShell version 3, you actually, if you try to run Git help on a fresh install, you're not going to have the help installed. So the first thing you'll have to do is run update help. I've actually already done that on my machine, but if you run Git help with no parameters, you'll actually see that it basically explains everything that I just said. So you can see where it comes in and says, that what Git help does. It explains what online help is. You can find help for Windows PowerShell online in the TechNet library. It tells you how to run update help, and it tells you how to use Git help. So the basic syntax you would tell it, you type in Git help and then the commandlet that you want to get help on. If you want to get help, online help, you would type Git help and the commandlet with the -online parameter. They have these conceptual topics, so you can type Git help about _ and the topic name. But all of these accept wildcards as well. So what I want to do first is actually, to give you an example of using Git help, we're going to call Git help on itself. And I also do want to, I'll cover how to find aliases a little bit in a minute. But there is, well, it's not really an alias, but you can use help as well. So help and man are wrapper functions for Git help that basically call Git help and then pipe it to the more filter or function. So if you were to type, Git help, and we'll call it on itself, Git help on the Git help commandlet. If you run that, you get a lot of information. That's a little bit more than a page. And if you actually just type help or man on that, then you'll see that it actually does it a page at a time. So anyway, so I called Git help on itself here, and what you'll notice is one of the first things I get is the syntax block, and this is very useful. So if you have a commandlet that you're not exactly sure what it does, or even if you do know what it does, but a lot of times you can run this and you can see other parameter sets or other ways to run the commandlet that you didn't really know existed. And what you'll see here, it's a little bit tough to read this, but what this is showing is that there's essentially 6 different parameter sets for Git help, and all a parameter set is, it's a way to provide mutually exclusive parameters, so that you can, in the case of Git help, you can see that it looks like they all contain the name, the category parameter, the component parameter, the full parameter. No, wait, I'm sorry, not the full. The full is not common among them. So it looks like the big difference between them, this parameter set has the full switch. This one has the detailed switch. This one has the example switch. And so you may be wondering, what are these switches, or actually what do any of these parameters do? Well, Git help will actually show that information for you as well. So the information we get back from Git help, we have a name, a synopsis, which is a short description of the commandlet or the function. Git help, well, actually I was about to say what Git help covers, but Git help will actually cover this. It will tell you everything that it will do in the long description. So we'll actually get help for commandlets, functions, workflows, providers, sim commands in PowerShell version 3, aliases, scripts, and it'll cover a little bit more. Now, we're not seeing what the parameters do, and we're not seeing what some of the examples are. So if you actually look at the remarks, Git help is telling us that we can run Git help with the example switch, or we can run Git help detailed or Git help full. So let's run Git help on itself again. And actually I'm going to switch over real quick to the ISE just because it'll allow a wider screen and it'll look a little bit better, I think. So we're going to call Git help on itself again, but we'll call it with a detailed parameter switch. So again, it's a lot of information, but we're going to go back up. We'll look at what the difference is now. So we still have a name like we had before. We have the synopsis, the short description. We have the syntax information, and we have the description. But what we have now is this parameter section. And you can actually see the parameter section will give you a description of what each of the parameters are used for. So you can see that the Git help parameter, or the Git help commandlet, you can give it a category and pass it a string, so you can tell that it actually accepts an array of strings. And this is how you can tell Git help that you're only interested in seeing information for aliases or commandlets or functions or providers, workflows, help files, or any combination of them, because it accepts an array of strings. So when you pass the detailed switch, the detailed or full switch, and actually let's go over what the different switches are. It tells you here, if you pass it detailed, then that adds parameter descriptions and examples to the basic help display. If you pass it the example switch, it displays only the name, synopsis, and examples. If you pass it the full switch, then it's going to show even more than what detailed did. It shows the entire help topic for the commandlet, so including everything that detailed has, but also input and output object types, additional notes, things like that. So, and one thing that is really neat in PowerShell version 3 that I like is they have this show window switch that will actually bring up it brings up the help in a separate window. So, you can see that. You can use this little find box up here to search through it, which is really neat. So now what I want to do, because we're still going to cover Git help, because Git help can be used to actually find commandlets and find different commands to run, and to find conceptual about topics and things like that. So we have the examples above, but let's call it with just the example switch so that we can see some of the things that it can be used for. And so you can see that the examples, this is straight from the PowerShell documentation, so you can see that calling just Git help, and we already did that, it'll display help information about how to, a little bit on how to get you started using the help system if you forget how to use it. You can call Git help with an Git help star, and it'll display a list of all of the available help topics. Now, I'm not going to run that right now because it will actually return a lot of things. But we'll take this example here. This is very useful, actually. And I would recommend to anybody, if you have some free time, go through and look at these conceptual topics. So to do that, you would just say Git help about _ star, and you'll see all these different conceptual help articles. So you have about aliases, about arrays, about functions and about functions advanced. So I mean, so you can type git help about any of these that you like that look good to you. So about functions advanced, and then you get a help article just like what we saw for the when we called it on the git help for a commandlet. But you get a long description that explains a lot of good information. And it also tells you related, things that are related. So you can also call git help on aliases. So everybody, dir and ls are aliases for git child item. So you can call git help on ls, and you'll see that it should actually come back, and it'll tell you, this is the help topic for git child item. Calling git help on git child item will actually give you the exact same help. You can use, like I said before, you can call git help with wildcards so that you can find, so this should, and actually, so I guess there's only one child. Let's do git. We should get a lot back on this. And that was a little more than I was expecting, but yeah, git is that's probably one of the most used verbs, so that might not have been the best example. But you can see that this is returned functions, commandlets, it looks like that's all it returned. And actually, as a matter of fact, it may be the case. Let me see something real quick. Git help parameter, what was it, category? Okay, good. So for Git Command, it isn't the case, but I was making sure that the default value for Git Help was all categories. And we're going to cover Git Command in a little bit, so you'll see what I was talking about with that in just a minute. So let's see. So that's a little overview of Git Help, and in a little bit, as we cover some of the other commandlets, I'm going to touch back on Git Help. We're going to actually look those up with Git Help. But you can use Git Help to obviously find documentation, and the PowerShell team, I mean, that's one of the things I've always been very, very impressed with. The entire PowerShell, from the start, it seems like they took the documentation part of this very, very, very seriously. And so there is a wealth of information that you can find just digging through the PowerShell help. But one of the other core commandlets for PowerShell would be the Git Command. And so what is Git Command? Well, let's call Git Help on it and see what it says. So Git Command, we're just going to go over the, we'll look at the synopsis real quick, and I'll just briefly cover the description. But the synopsis says it gets all commands. You can see there are 2 parameter sets for it. And like it says, it gets all commands that are installed on the computer. That can be commandlets, it can be aliases, functions, workflows, filters, scripts, and applications. Anything that's any applications that are in your system, your environment path, it will return those as commands as well. So like anything that you can type, you can type ipconfig or anytime that you can just type an executable without having to type the full path, that is a command in PowerShell. So Git Command will show you the information for that as well. So let's see. So if you just type Git Command, then you'll see that actually it's going to return a ton of information, but that didn't return everything. So that returned, so that returned 995 objects. I piped that into measure object, which is another very, very useful commandlet. If you're interested in that, I would recommend using Git Help to look it up. But that's showing that calling Git Command with no parameters returned 995 commands. If I call Git Command with a star, then it's returning 1730. And so the difference there is that when we look up git command, git help, git command, parameter, when we look up the parameters, you'll see that the command type, so there is, and we'll go back up and look at the syntax again in just a second, but there is a command type parameter that you pass to it, and the default for it is just commandlets, functions, workflows, and aliases. So it's not returning applications. And so, well, let's go back and look at let's call git command on itself to see what it actually returns. So when you call git command, it looks like it's not actually very useful, because it comes back and tells you that git command is a commandlet, its name is git command, and it tells you the module that it's contained in. But as everything with PowerShell, everything is an object. So that is what the PowerShell formatting system was told to show you by default if you don't type anything in. So you can actually store the result of that to a variable, and then go back in and look at that variable. And actually, you don't have to store it to a variable, but we'll say you can store it to a variable and then pipe that to format list, or you could actually pipe it to get member, which is going to be our next commandlet that we cover. But you can see that it actually does contain a good bit more information. It contains a definition. It contains, you can see that the path and the assembly info appear to be blank here, but for other commands, that's not going to be the case. You can see the DLL that the commandlet, that's basically the module, or that's the library that the commandlet is contained in. So we can actually, so let's get back to the git help and let's take a look at some of the parameters that you can pass to git command. So if you look at the syntax of it, you have this argument list, and so what the argument list parameter is used for, let's go back to this. So we'll go through the different arguments that it will accept, or the parameters it will accept. So you've got the all parameter, which will get all commands, including commands of the same type that have the same name. By default, git command gets only the commands that run when you type the command. So for example, if you were to type git command notepad, that's going to return an application. But if you actually type git command notepad all, and let's actually do select name and path, you'll see that there are actually two. Notepad is on my machine in two locations. So if I just type git command notepad, it just gets the command that would have been executed if I typed notepad and pressed enter. But if I pass it the all parameter, it shows me all of them. This actually becomes a little more useful where, let's say we take, let's say git random. So let's do a git command on git random, and you can see that that's a commandlet, and if I pass it to all, I still only have one instance of it. But if I were to make a custom git random function that just returns something that says, custom function here. So if I run git random now, it doesn't actually run the real commandlet, it runs my function that I've just put in here. So if I type git command git random, you can see that it's not the command type is not a commandlet, it's a function, because I just made this custom function. So if I type git command and pass it to all, though, then you can see there was, this is the function is the one. If I just type git random, it'll run that, but there is a commandlet here, and you can actually do some pretty neat stuff with this. You can take it and say, well, so first of all, even though git random has been replaced, I guess there is in the order precedence of how executable items get executed, my function is seen first, so it gets called instead of the commandlet. But I can actually, if I say git random all, git command get random all and assign that to a variable. So, yep, it would help if I type it right. So you can see that, you know, I have the that's the commandlet there. So I can actually execute it still. You know, you can also, we're not going to get into this, but I could actually use like the fully qualified kind of the long description. You know, I could still run the commandlet that way, but the objects that you get back from Git Command will actually, you can run those and you can pass them parameters as well. I think I can, let's see. Well, we'll go over that kind of stuff again in a little bit. Let's get back to the parameters to Git Command. So that was an example of how you can use the all parameter. You have the argument list, and what this kind of allows you to do, they have a very good example of this in the Git Command. The argument list gives you a way, so PowerShell has dynamic parameters that can be generated kind of on the fly depending on some other parameter that's been passed. For instance, get child item. You have different parameters available to you depending on if you're passing it a registry path or a file path or a certificate, path to the certificate drive. So if you pass argument list, it gives you a chance to call Git Command as if you were passing that in. And we'll go over, there's a very good example in the Git help examples for that, and we'll cover that again in a little bit. But you've got the command type, and that's where you can tell it that you want to only get certain command types when you're, with your other search. So you can get only aliases or applications or commandlets, and by default you can see that it's showing, it'll show commandlets, functions, workflows, and aliases. You can limit what's being searched to a module.
Hey Ron, we've got a question.
Sure.
With Git help, how can you see what the default of the parameters are when first getting started?
Okay, so yeah, so with Git help, if you notice what I'm calling right there, so I called Git help and Git Command, and you can pass it. So there's a few ways. So if you pass it the full or the detailed or the show window, any of those, you're going to get a parameters section. So if we do the detailed, you get a parameter section when you come up here. That gives you all the information there. So never mind, hold on. So I guess that would actually be included in the full, probably, not the detailed. But the way I was showing it there, what I like to do, since I only cared about parameters, a lot of times I'll just pass it the actual parameter switch there. So since I typed Git help, Git Command, dash parameter, I could have actually, if I know that I want to look at the argument list parameter, then I can type that, and you can see when you use the dash parameter, it will give you all this extra information here. So you can see that, whether or not it's required, the position, if it has it. So what we were looking at a second ago was calling parameter and just telling it I wanted to see all the parameters. But the calling Git help with the full switch, I do know we'll call it. Full is basically everything. So full shows the parameter section along with this information. And so you can see if there is a default value, it will show what the default value is. So basically passing, dash full, dash parameter, and giving it a parameter name or a wildcard. And I believe show window does it as well. And yeah, it does. As far as I know, calling show window is this, it's like calling full and just putting it in a separate window. And we could actually see if call the Git help on the Git help, using the Git help commandlet, passing it the show window parameter displays a help topic in a window for easier reading. It doesn't seem to really, I don't see where it tells you if it's the equivalent of passing it dash full, but I hope that answered the question. So to actually see what the default values would be, you can use Git help and pass it the full switch or the parameter uh, give it the parameter argument and provide a wildcard or the parameter name that you're interested in, or show window. So back to the parameters for show command. So you can the module parameter will give you the chance to limit your search, what it's searching to specific modules. You can pass it to name, and almost all of most of these take wildcards as well. You can limit it to a specific name, and we'll go over some of that in just a second. You can limit it to a specific noun. So things in PowerShell, functions and commandlets, you're supposed to go by the verb, noun, naming convention. So get help, get command, get content, set content. So the verb, set, the noun, content. So you can actually search if you're looking for how to do something with if you're looking for a specific noun, you can see all the different verbs associated with that. You can call get command and pass it a specific noun. We'll do that again in just a second. You have this syntax switch, and I use this a lot. This is a way to, so when you call get help, you get that syntax section. Using get command, pass it the syntax switch, it shows you the exact same information, but it's a little bit, you don't have to get all that extra help information. That help information is wonderful, but sometimes you really do just want to really quick just see the syntax of something. The total count will allow you to limit the number of commands returned. Verb, that's the same way you can search on a noun, you can search on a verb. And the list imported will show you, if you pass that switch, then it'll only get commands that are in the current session. The parameter name, this is a very useful one. We'll cover that in just a second. This is, as far as I know, so it's introduced in Windows PowerShell 3. This will allow you can call get command and use this parameter name parameter, and you can say, I want to look for commandlets or function. I want to look for commands that have a parameter for computer name or PS session. You want to see, or sim session. You want to see the different functions that can deal with certain parameters. That's actually an incredibly useful feature. So let's call get help on get command, because the help system has wonderful examples as well. They usually do a very good job of at least touching on the different features available. And actually, one of the I'm not going to sit here and go through every single one of these examples, but we already showed what happens when you call get command. It'll get you all the aliases and functions and commandlets. But you can see, for these examples, this is actually, I love this example here. This is a good way to, if you're not necessarily working on something in PowerShell and you just want to, browse what's available. So if you're not trying to look up random help topics, you can use this example right here, and I'll run it in just a second. You can use this example though to find just random commands, and this will actually sort it and format everything so that everything's grouped by the noun. So if we run this, do we have a question?
Yeah, we sure do. Greg Stewart said he lost audio and just asked you to say that again, please.
Which one?
He's typing another message. Let's see what he says. What your favorite command is?
My favorite command is probably get member, and that's going to be the next commandlet we cover. I mean, that's I'm not saying that because of the I'm giving this presentation and I'm picking out of the three commandlets that I'm focusing on. Get member is something I literally use hundreds of times a week. Any session that I open, I use get member. I don't know, every 10 commands or so that I type is probably get member. It is one of the most useful commandlets, in my opinion, that they have. But actually, all of these, the get command, out of the three, I probably use Git Command the least. Git Help is up there on the list. It'd probably be in my top 10 somewhere, but Git Member by far is my favorite command. But the command that we just ran, I'm going to bring it back up. Git Command, and this is where we pass it the type, and this is straight out of the help documentation, examples for that. But we told Git Command we only wanted to see commandlets. We sorted it on the noun property, and that's so that when you call format table and you want to do a group by, it needs to be sorted. So then it groups it by the noun. So you can see here, we'll just go through some of the ones at the very end, but you have for XML, where the noun is XML, there are two commandlets: convert to XML and select XML. Where the noun is WSMan instance, there are 4 commandlets. So this command, this is just a really useful thing if you just want to randomly go through and look at the different nouns that are available, and see if something kind of piques your interest. And you might not get quite as much information if you were to run this like in PowerShell 2. So this does look a little bit overwhelming when you run it in PowerShell version 3. But this would be a command if you were just, like I said, looking for something. You don't really know what you want to work on for the day. You don't have any assignment to do. You just want to learn something random about PowerShell. Bring that up, pick a commandlet, and just use Git Help to look it up. Look at some of the examples and start using it. So we can go back and look at some of the other examples to Git Command though. Here's one where they actually show you how to create a function called Get Dynamic Parameters, and this is where they actually use this argument list. Instead of doing that though, I think they actually have a command. Yes, so here's one. Let's do this. So Git Command, in this example, they're calling Git Command on the Git child item, and they're passing it. They're using the argument list. It says args there, but it's the argument list parameter to Git Command, and it's showing the. It's if you were to call Git child item cert to tell it you want to do the cert drive, you get a few extra parameters that you wouldn't get otherwise. So let's look at Git Command, Git child item, syntax, and you can see the syntax section for it. But if you were to pass it the argument list cert and look at the syntax, you'll see that there are extra parameters. These are dynamic parameters that PowerShell would offer you if you were looking in a certificate drive. You can pass the code signing certificate switch to see, to basically filter and only show code signing certificates. You can look for certificates that are expiring in a certain number of days. I believe if we do this and pass it registry key, and maybe I'm wrong on that one. It must be. I think it's the item property commandlets. Where you're actually setting registry values and things like that. Maybe that have some dynamic parameters there. But you can also use Git Command to. So let's go back. Well, let's cover Git Member real quick, and then we're going to come back around to Git Command and kind of inspect the object that Git Command returned. Because like I said a second ago, Git Member is probably, by far, it's the commandlet that I use the most. So what Git Member does, let's call Git Help on that. We'll do the show window because it's a little bit, to me, it's a little bit easier to go through. Now, if you guys can't see that, just let me know. But so the synopsis for this, it gets the properties and methods of objects. And this is this is where you really can, you can do things without having to get on the internet to search for, the properties and the methods that are available. That MSDN is a great resource for finding a lot of this type of stuff, but you really, most of the time, you can actually find what you're looking for using Git Member. So this will show you, it'll show you methods, it'll show you properties. So methods are basically, it's like a function you can call on an object. and properties are, just that they're properties that are contained. So I'll give some examples of that in just a minute. There's actually not too much to it. There's only one parameter set for it, and basically we'll go over the parameters here in just a second. But there's not many of them, so this is a very easy command to go over. I'm not really going to cover this. So using this for switch parameter, it covers some, these. I could probably do, well, not a whole presentation, but I would actually love to do a presentation explaining what the PS base, PS adapted, PS object, and PS type names are. But it really is kind of past, if you're using Git member, you really don't need to use the force, and there's no real need to go over what these properties on the objects are. But here's the big one, the input object. So whenever you can pipe something to it, you can see here that this parameter accepts pipeline input, or you could just pass it a dash input object and then pass an object to it. And like I said, we'll go over that in just a second. The member type is where you tell it that you only want to see methods or properties or whatever. By default, it shows all members. The name would be, if you kind of know the property name, or if you're some objects have tons and tons of properties, and you might know that the property you're looking for contains, I don't know, the word file or something, so you could do star file star in there for the name. Static, this shows you, so if you have in object-oriented programming, usually you actually have to have an instance of an object to do something with it, but you can have static classes where having an instance doesn't really make sense. So sometimes you have objects like string. The string class has static methods that allow you to do operations on strings, and you don't necessarily have to have an instance of a string to use those. And the string class can also instantiate an object of it, and you get separate properties and methods and things like that. We'll cover that again in a second. And one class that I think is nothing but static methods would probably be the math class. But again, we'll cover some of that in just a second. Question?
Yeah, that's what Michael said, that math round is an example of a static method.
Yes, and what it is, all it means is you don't need to, and for the last 10 minutes of the presentation, I was planning to kind of cover a little bit of .NET, discovering .NET things, discovering constructors for objects and things like that. But yeah, he's right. There are, so in the case of, well, let's bring it up and look. So if we call the, let's see, what is it? So system math, we pass that type to get member, and we pass it to static. Remember, you can actually see that there are all of these methods here. And this is something that you could go to the MSDN site and look up the system.math class, and this is what it's going to tell you. It's going to tell you that there are basically two constant properties here. So the value of v and the value of pi. So you can actually see that there is a pi. And there are these methods: truncate, tangent, square root, raising something to a power. But these are things that you don't need an instance of a math object to do this. I mean, I guess I'm not going to try to go too much into. I probably wouldn't do it justice anyway, and I would more than likely not do a very good job of explaining it. But there are. I use the static, calling get member static on enumerations a lot, and enumerations are. Yeah, I'm not really going to try to go into those as well right now either. But just know, get member, you won't call it with the static parameter all that often. I mean, it's good to know that that's there, but if you're beginning in PowerShell, all you really need to remember is get member and the alias. And I haven't even really covered aliases yet. So we'll use Git Command in a minute to figure out how to look for aliases. You can use Git Command to look for alias, or you can actually use get alias to look at aliases, but in just a second we'll cover that. I wanted to show how you can use get member to look at certain things. So let's say we wanted to get a list of the services on the machine. So we can call the get service commandlet and store it in the services variable. So if I take the services variable now and pipe it to get member, then it will show me that these service objects, this is what is actually contained in them. There is an alias property called name. You've got the property called required services. You have these methods here: close, continue, create object, pause, refresh, start, stop, wait for status. So essentially you can take, we'll take the first service object out of there, and we can actually say, what's the display name of that? And we can tell that there is a display name property because getMember just told us that there was a display name property. We can see the dependent services on this. It apparently does, yeah, actually Adobe Acrobat Update Service. It's not going to depend on any services. Oh wait, no, it's not going to have any services that depend on it. There's actually also a services dependent on property, and it's not going to have that. But getMember just told us everything that a service object has. Not only that, it also showed us the type information up here. This is very useful a lot of times as well. So we can do the same thing. Get child item. Now we'll do it, where we are. GM is an alias to getMember, so we'll look up how to find that in a second. But you can see calling it on. You can pass a single object. What I'm doing here is actually passing a collection. Get child item is returning a collection of directories and file objects, and you can see that basically I passed all that to getMember, and it's showing me that hey, there's at least one system.io.directory.info object that was returned, and out of all of those that were returned, here is what was returned for them. So here are the methods, here are the note properties, here are the methods, here are the properties, and these note properties, the one part where I was saying the PS base and PS adapted and PS extended, PowerShell does, it's adding things on, so a lot of this stuff you're not going to see in the MSDN articles. All of these that start with PS and that are note properties. There is a way to show, you can actually show, view base. So, that's actually a way to show exactly what would be contained in the true .NET object and what is in the MSDN documentation. But, to be able to take, when you're just working with anything that's built in with .NET, sometimes you maybe add, like I use a lot of times the HTML agility pack. That's an assembly that I add on separately. And, there's not going to be any MSDN documentation for that. That would be that you'd have to find documentation for the people that made that assembly. So you can still use getMember to inspect the objects that are being returned. So you can, look. So obviously, having the full documentation helps a lot of times. But you can, if the methods and the properties are named in a way that they make sense, which they should be, you can kind of figure out what things do. This is something that I used to do a lot with VBScript, and it's with VBScript you had to go look up documentation for a lot of things. It was really, really hard to try to inspect the contents of everything. So I did say that GM was an alias for getMember. So using git help and git command, we can look for aliases. So git command. So that one way we could look for aliases, we could actually say that I want to call git command type of alias, and we can do that right there, and that's showing all of our aliases. And so I could say git command type alias name. Wait, hold on. Well, So we could use Git command. We could do a command type of alias, but we could also say that we want to see commands with a name. We could do something like this. We're looking for a command that deals with aliases. So you could call git command -name alias. You could call git command, and I'm looking for a command with a noun of alias. And you can see that PowerShell has these commandlets. You have an export alias, a get alias, an import alias. So this, you could actually use this to search, use git help. Git alias looks like that may be able to get aliases for us. So you can call get alias. You could call git help, and you might find out that the get alias has a parameter called definition. And so you can call get alias and look for, you know the commandlet you're looking for, so you want to see the any aliases that are defined for that commandlet. So you could find one that has multiple aliases. So you can see the get child item has an alias for, it has 3 aliases for it. So, that's a way, if you know you're looking for a specific topic, you can, use wildcards to search under git help or git command to find commands that will allow you to do something. And that may give you something else to look at. And then you can use git help or git command on the new commandlets or the new commands that you found. And I literally am barely scratching the surface on any of the stuff you can do here. And I tried to limit it to those 3 commandlets, but PowerShell is almost anything you try to look at it. It can be, you can pick something up and get it to where it's usable within 5 minutes. But you can also, a lot of these topics are so deep that you could spend hours and hours researching them, and you still, don't really haven't mastered whatever the commandlet or command is. So, I feel like I haven't even really scratched the surface on any of that. So are there any questions about those? Because like I said, I did want to spend just a few minutes looking over some of the .NET stuff, how you can, use the .NET framework and kind of discover some of the stuff about those objects. But I don't want to do that unless, if there are any questions about the git help, git command, or git member. So, all right, no questions then. So let's go in to looking at how to discover the .NET stuff for now. So PowerShell can, do an amazing number of things. And as a PowerShell version 3, as they continue to come out with new releases of PowerShell, I think they're, so with version 2, there were, and even with version 3, there are a lot of shortcomings with the built-in commandlets. So, they have things like the community extensions out there that allow you to do other things, but sometimes you'll come across something that you want to do that's just, you can't, you've searched on the internet, you can't find a way to do it. But if you can't find a way to do it with native PowerShell commandlets or with community extension commandlets or anything like that, or functions that other people have made, you can't find a way to easily do it. So you can actually, you in theory can do pretty much anything with .NET. So you can actually have PowerShell use .NET to do whatever it is you're looking for. So there are ways to, the first thing, if you go visit my blog, I've actually got a blog article that I posted weeks ago. I've been meaning to come up with the second part, but I work with service ACLs because I couldn't find a way to easily look up service ACL information. So you can, go to Bing or Google and try to find a .NET class that deals with whatever your particular problem is. But you can also, from within PowerShell, get a list of all of these types as well. So, this app domain object here in PowerShell has a property called current domain. So you can take this thing, and if we pipe it to get member, you can look, and you can see that it's got a ton of stuff that it can do. But one of the most useful things here, for what I wanted to show for this example here was there's this Git Assemblies method. So you can call that Git Assemblies, and I'm not actually, well, so if we call Git Assemblies like that, these are all of the assemblies that are actually loaded. So each of the assemblies has their own types that are contained inside of them. So if you actually take that and pipe it to a for each, and then for each object, well, let's actually take this. Let's look at Git member on these assemblies. You can see that out of that collection, there basically were two types that were returned. There's a system.reflection.runtime assembly, and there are some of the objects are system.reflection.emit.internal assembly builder. But if you look at the properties and methods on here, you can see that there is a Git types, and there's also a Git exported types method. Question?
We have a question. What's the point of the : after the system.app domain?
Okay, so that's actually a way to call a static member. So if we take this app domain and look at it, remember a second ago I called : current domain, and so you'll see that there's not a, when I call Git member, pipe it to Git member, you don't see a current domain here, and that's actually because this is actually looking at a system.runtime type object. But if I pipe this, and yeah, actually, so this is a, hold on. There we go. So if I pipe that to, if I call it with the static argument, you'll see that there are 3 static properties. And so what that means is, so if you want to call a static method or a static property, you do the : So back to our math example. If you wanted to actually call any of these, raise something to a certain, take something and power. So you actually use the : to tell it that you're wanting to do to use a static member, essentially. So that's what we're doing. When we call this, we're basically telling it to, that current domain is a static member on the app domain type, and so it's returning. This is one of those things. If you just take this command and you can put it into, you can make like a function if you want to, because what we're actually about to do, we're going to, for each one of these objects that's returned, we are going to call Git types on it. And we're going to tell it that we want to only see types where the, you'll have to trust me on this one, there is a, one of the properties is public. So in general, when you're looking at the different types, you really only probably care about the public types. And of course I hit up in the wrong spot. All right, what I want to do, this is going to return a ton of types, so I just want to store this to in a variable real quick. So all I really wanted to show was, without going to the internet at all, so that returned, it looks like 11,460. So going back to my blog post I did on service ACLs, I was looking, is there maybe a service ACL type or a service ACL class? So you can actually take these types, and I can now pipe this to where. So let's look at just one of these. We'll look at the first one there. I don't know why the base type isn't there. That's weird. Hold on. Oh, actually, that might be because those are, they actually might not have. Oops. Yeah, okay. So I can actually take this now and say I want to see well, let's pipe it to get member real quick to see what we're dealing with. So you can see that these things have, remember I said they have an isPublic property on them. But when you look, you'll see that they have a name and they have a full name. So this is actually, when you look, when we did the get child item and pass it to get member, you can see that, this returned system.io.fileinfo. So we could actually take types and say we only want to see types where the name, well, we'll do this. Full name matches, what was it, system.io file. That should be enough. Oops, I need to close that out. So, you can see where, and I guess it would help to show the full name. So, this, I was able to, if bring up anything that contains system.io.file, and you can see all these different types here. But going back to my example where I was talking about service ACLs, I can actually come in and say, I want to see any classes that contain ACL. And there's not that many. And what you'll see if you read the blog post, I ended up settling, using this, I ended up settling on just using I believe I just used a raw ACL class. But so you can take these type names that you have now, and you can actually, so that is a true type there. And actually in the ISE for version 3, you can actually just essentially it does this searching for you. To be honest, this was something that I used to use a lot in PowerShell version 2, but version 3, the ISE does this for you. You can literally open up, do a square bracket to say you're doing a type in ACL in this case, and I just hit tab. It's going to take it a second, and of course it's going to make me a liar. Hold on. Raw ACL maybe? Okay, so it looks like you do have to do a little bit, so it's not completely, yeah, okay, so I was kind of a liar. But if this comes in a lot, if I know that I want to use a raw ACL type, I can actually, the tab completion works on type names as well. That's new to the PowerShell version 3 ISE. But if I come back and I'm looking at this type right here, so I can actually call any of these types. They have a very useful method called get constructor, get constructors. So a constructor is basically a way to instantiate an object of that type. So you can actually call the get constructors, and when you do this, you're going to get some objects back. Again, .NET is a object-oriented language, so you get these objects back that it's not very readable, but this contains a wealth of information. The easiest thing you can actually do is call the toString method on each one of those. So that will give you, that'll show you that this raw ACL has 2 constructors for it. You can pass it, it looks like a single byte and a single integer, or you can pass it a byte array and a single integer. Now that's still not showing you that much information because you don't really know what each of those represent. But if you go back, if you call the get constructors, you can actually look at it and you'll see that, and we saw it just a second ago, but we'll call get member on it again, and you'll see that there is this. Let's see. Type. Well. Name. Let's see. Get parameters. So, if we take these, let's actually constructors 0.get parameters. Yeah, so you can see that for these constructor objects that are returned, we can actually get the parameters that are involved. So you can get a friendly name for these. So you could actually write, I'll write a little one-liner real quick, but you can make this into a function that accepts a string or a type, and that it can spit this information out for you each time. But you could actually come in and say, I want to get the constructors, and for each one of those, I want to, let's see, should be able to say select parameters. No, I'm sorry. It was get constructors, and then for each, get parameters. So yeah, that gives us that. And then you could say, let's see. Actually, all right, so we'll do this. Instead of, I should have, somewhere I had an actual, if I search for it on the computer, I do have a function that I made a long time ago. I'm having trouble figuring out, and if I had another, I don't want to spend too long on this. If I had another 10 minutes, we could use get member to kind of get through it. But you can call the get constructors. For each one of the constructors, you can look at the parameters, and for each one of the parameters, you could actually, if you wanted to, look at the name and parameter type. So you can see that for the first constructor, remember if we looked at the get constructors and did the toString, you could see that the first one it took a byte and an integer. Well, that byte, you can see that the name of that is revision. So if you were to look this thing up on the MSDN site, you would see these friendly names as well. So you can tell that for this constructor, it is the byte is for the revision, and the integer is for the capacity. And the MSDN would show you, the documentation would give you like a short description for each one as well. We could actually come in though and do the same thing that we just did for that second constructor, and you can see that the byte array that it's looking for is the actual friendly name of it is for binary form. So you can essentially do that for any .NET type. You can literally view how to create the object, how to instantiate the objects on the fly from the command line. Again, without having to search on the internet. That's not to say that searching on the internet is a bad thing. It definitely is not. MSDN is going to provide a lot of information for you. But like I said, sometimes you have assemblies that aren't, they weren't made by Microsoft. They were made by a third party, and sometimes they have wonderful documentation for them as well. Sometimes they don't, and to be able to inspect them like that on the fly, to me at least, is incredibly useful. So. Let's see. So I covered vaguely or briefly how to search for the different type names. So if you're looking for something in particular, we could do the types where name matches. If you're looking for service stuff, and this actually, that's going to return a lot more than I was expecting. But so doing the raw .NET types, that's not that is much more of a intermediate to advanced topic, but it really does kind of open up an entire new world in PowerShell. So I would definitely recommend spending time with and you use Git member on any of that kind of stuff. Again, that Git member is one of my favorite commandlets, but definitely use time. Take the time to learn Git Command, Git Help, and Git Member. Those three will let you, inspect. Git Member will let you inspect any of the objects that are returned from commandlets or commands or functions or anything like that. Git Help, honestly and truly, it really does contain a wealth of information. So, when you look at, and actually instead of that, let's do. We want to look at commandlets and what were the other? Yeah, help file and commandlets. Just git help commandlet. So just out of those, git help is returning. It does have some aliases there, and that's because when you tell it you want to see commandlets, it's returning the aliases for the commandlet. So, but including aliases, 653 help topics that come back from that, and like I said earlier, almost any time that I've actually read the full description on something from a help topic, I really almost every single time, even if I thought I knew everything there was to know about a specific commandlet, or I almost always learned something new. And these about topics are incredibly, incredibly useful as well. So, get out there, use Git help, use Git command, use Git member, and if you feel comfortable, if you know how to do things in the .NET framework as well, and even if you don't right now, that will come at some point if you use PowerShell enough. You'll come across something that you don't know how to do, or something you need to know how to do, and you can't find a way to do it anywhere else. And if you're comfortable enough with PowerShell, it's very easy to jump right into using the .NET framework as well. So with that, are there any questions? And actually, anybody that wants to now, you're more than welcome to unmute the microphone. And we don't have so many people that I don't think it would get out of hand or anything. So I think I'm pretty much done.